I'm Srija Gain from FTP UT2. I will be the host this evening. Welcome to this informative session on design thinking for sustainable fashion, which will provide a head start to your journey towards towards building your pitch perfect presentation in Hult Prize 23. So, design thinking is an innovative and creative problem solving process that helps organizations and individuals generate new ideas and solutions. We are thrilled to welcome Mr. Avijit Dutta among us, who is also an alumni of Jadavpur University and graduated in the year 2002. He will be taking up today's session and will help you guys unleash your team's potential and learn to come up with some great ideas. Mr. Avijit Dutta is an expert in design and content who trains and facilitates design thinking into product and service design for startups to large corporations. He is very experienced in the field of design thinking as he was the Chief Strategy Officer at Ziffy Homes. In 2017, he founded the company Nonlinear and is currently also the Chief Designer there. We welcome you, Avijit Da. Now, I would request you to carry on with the session.
Perfect. Thanks, Rija, and thanks everyone for taking your time to spend this evening with me. I hope that we will have some productive conversation here. Okay, I will have to share my screen. I'll tell you how we are going to structure this whole session. I think it is not going to take more than 90 minutes. So bear with me. We'll try to, okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Perfect. Just give me a second. Let me organize this a little better. Okay, so I hope I'm visible, right? So the screen is visible to everybody? Yes?
Yes.
Perfect. So the way I'm structuring this talk today is like this. So we have got three parts to this conversation. Part one, I'll very quickly maybe take about 10 to 15 minutes to give you a brief about the design thinking basics. I'll just touch upon few things which are important for you to understand in design thinking. I think then rest of the stuff you can take it forward from here. You can Google up. There are enough resources online, right? Then we will get into part two, which is a little bit about the state of the fashion industry today in 2022, and we'll touch upon, let's say, 10 possible fields, possible domains where we can look for opportunities to design. Okay, and then in part three, I will talk about one of the techniques, which is a linear technique, which can be used to generate idea, and then you can probably pick it up from here, and then you can build your own story and own pitch. So that's pretty much what I have, and then we can, if time permits, then we can pick up few questions from the audience. Is that okay? Okay. I hope that this sounds like a plan. Okay, the first one is design thinking basics, right? So what is design thinking? Design thinking is a framework for problem solving. Okay. Then you might ask, okay, what is problem solving? If you have to understand problem solving, we have to first understand what are the different nature of problems that exist in the world, and we call that a problem universe. Okay, and in that let me just quickly go to the screen. Any problem that we solve, okay, as engineers or artists or politician, doesn't matter. Any problem that we solve in this world are typically coming from these two different paradigms. Okay, one is called an analytical paradigm, which is typically a known unknown. So an example would be rolling a dice, tossing a coin. You exactly know how many different outcomes are there, but what you do not know is which of those outcomes you are going to face, right? Just an example for problem statements which comes from the analytical paradigm. So the entire subject of engineering primarily deals with solving analytical problems. And typically analytical problems are backward looking. It relies heavily on data, right? Any sort of analytics that we do, any forecasting or anything that we do based on the past data, we try to preempt the future, right? So that's analytical problem solving. However, there is another kind of problem which is there in this world, but they cannot be solved by just looking at the past, okay, or cannot be solved just by applying analytical thinking, and they are called the wicked problems. Now, what are the wicked problems? An example could be, let's say, global warming, okay, or let's say forest fire, or let's say when COVID came in, okay, in the first place. That was a wicked problem because nobody knew what is this virus. It was an unknown territory. Meaning, or let's say when Elon Musk was sending the first rocket to, a relaunchable rocket is what he wanted to create. Before that, we have been always using a rocket system which can only be used once, right? So that was the technology back then. But now he had a vision that, okay, look, why can't we reuse the rockets? And that is definitely something that we have never done. So therefore, we do not have any data points. We cannot look at the past and learn from it. What we can do is definitely the earlier science and engineering, which has helped us to push the gravitational boundaries. That definitely helps, but that is also self-limiting. So that kind of problems, which are new, novel, we have never seen, never witnessed, are called wicked problems. And the traditional approach of solving problems, which is coming from the analytical paradigm, if you apply that to solve a wicked problem, it will fail miserably. Okay, so therefore we need a different framework, a different problem-solving framework, so to speak, to solve wicked problems. And among many such methodologies, design thinking is one, and fairly popular. You can see design thinking all over the social media these days, but it's fairly old, very old technique, which has evolved over the years. Now that's wicked problem, and that's analytical problem. Wicked problem solving requires you to do forward thinking. It's like, okay, I'll give you one more example. Let's say we are driving a car, right? In an automobile, we have a rear view window, rear view mirror, right? And we have a window through which we look forward. When you are driving on a highway, you do not look at the rear view mirror all the time, right? The rear view tells you where you have been, the path that you have already traversed, right? And it is useful. It is definitely useful for you to take decisions, especially when you are changing lanes or you're going around the corner. However, let's say if your total driving time is 100, probably it is only less than 10 out of that 100 would be the duration on which you will be looking at the rear view. Rest of the time you will be focused on the front of the car, right? So therefore, you can also look at this analytical problem solving as the rear view window, rear view mirror, and looking forward is something that that is design, right? So by nature, essentially, design means it is a forward-looking technique. Design is always forward-looking, data and analytics is always backward looking. But we oftentimes combine these two things to predict the future, and that's perfectly okay. That's where we get into modeling and stuff like that, right? So that's all about problem universe. Then I want to touch upon one more thing. Now, therefore, we understood that we would apply design thinking to solve wicked problems. If you are not solving a wicked problem, it is probably better to use some other kind of techniques which are applicable or which are much more useful to solve analytical problems. Now, if we are talking about a paradigm where the traditional data-based or backward-looking problem solving techniques will not be useful, we need to have a shift in our mind, right? And therefore, in order to thrive or even be effective in using design thinking, we need 7 kinds of mindsets, which leads to one, which is absolutely essential. I do not have the time to actually get into the details of it, but I'll very quickly touch upon it. So the first one is ambiguity, right? So we know that we are in the domain of unknown. It's uncertainty. It's not risk. Risk is something, you can define risk as something that you do not know which outcome will come, but you know how many possible outcomes are there, like rolling a dice. You know exactly 6 possible outcomes, but you do not know when you roll a dice which of the 6 will come up. But you can always apply statistics, estimate, and do some prediction. But when you do not know how many faces are there in the roll, in the dice that you are rolling, you cannot possibly use the traditional mathematics to do that. But yes, there are different techniques for it. I'm not getting into that right now. So my focus right now is to make you understand that you need to shift your mindset. And one of the primary mindset is embracing the ambiguity, right? That means that you give yourself the permission to explore, so that the right answer comes in front of you, right? So that's one. The second one is empathy. Now, empathy is your capacity to step into somebody else's shoes, right? So we understand that, but it goes much deeper than the word just means, right? So you actually have to think, feel, and be like that other person for whom you are trying to solve the problem. And we also often call this approach is human-centered, right? So we are solving for humans, not for machines, right? Or algorithms. Machines and algorithms are for human beings, not the other way around. So this entire approach of design thinking is human-centered. So therefore, empathy is key. The third mindset is iteration. So iteration is something that we do in order to learn more about the problem statement and more about the person for whom we are trying to solve the problem. Creative confidence, very interesting. I can probably talk for an hour on this, but just to give you some understanding. Creativity and confidence both are necessary in order to get to a solution which is practical, right? So creativity, many people are creative, right? Creativity is your ability to think through a problem statement or a particular problem. But if you are creative but you do not have the confidence to work on it, then you do not have creative confidence. So people who have got the confidence but not creativity, they will not go anywhere. At the same time, people who have got only creative thinking but do not have the confidence to act on it, they will definitely not also be able to produce something which changes the world for better, right? So that's creative confidence. Learning from failure again comes from iteration. So when we do something, it's just cliche, but believe me, this is the core of it. We do not look at failure as something that will get us back. We definitely look forward to failures, because failures teach us a lot of assumptions which were not right in the first iteration, right? So therefore, failure is a teacher here. Make it is basically thinking with hands. We have a strong bias for building things and putting those things in front of our users and learn from learn from them. So we do not preempt, and we do not we avoid passing judgment. So we defer passing the judgment. And finally, optimism. Innovation is optimism is the fuel for innovation, right? So if you are not optimistic, you will not be able to think about a world which is much better than what it is today, correct? So those are the 7 mindsets which are absolutely essential here. If you have any questions, I urge you to note it down, and we will have a Q&A later on. The next one is thinking outlook. Thinking outlook. And what is that? Now, thinking outlook talks about what is the objective of our thinking, right? Can you just excuse me for a second? There's some emergency. It just come.
Yeah.
I'll just
Sure,
be
sure.
back. Yeah, I'll just be
Sure.
back in 2 minutes. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Yes. Yes, you're
Yeah,
audible.
am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Apologies for this mess up. Yeah, no worries.
It's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking about thinking outlooks. So as we understand the design thinking, of course, there are two components to it: design and thinking. And I told you that design is forward looking. It is typically used for solving problems which are of wicked nature. That is the sense that we are using design here. And then we need to also think, of course, that is where, I mean, all the ideas are coming from between 2 years that we have, right? So whatever we have between 2 years, that's what is the core of all the solutions that are, that we have or we see in the world. So therefore we are talking about thinking. Then what kind of thinking? We need three different kinds of thinking. One is called the divergent thinking. So when we are in a divergent mode of thinking, we create choices. It's like, think of innovation as a series of decisions that we take, right? Series of decisions, small decisions that we take, right, or we make. And so in the divergent phase of thinking, we do not decide, we do not prioritize, we create choices. We create choices for doing a particular task. Okay. For example, let's say if I have to decide whether let's say I'll go from my home to office, and I need to decide whether I'll take my car, or I'll book an Uber, or I will walk, or whatever. I'll carpool with somebody else. These are the choices that I'm creating in front of me, right? And then the next phase of thinking is evaluation. And in evaluating mode, we evaluate the choices that we have created with a single objective of reaching the office, let's say in this example. And I weigh balance, okay, it's raining, I don't want to take my car. It's better to carpool with my friend who's a neighbor, maybe. We can also kind of figure it out. So that's the evaluation, and evaluating all the choices. And then there is a convergent thinking, where we narrow down to fewer choices that we want to execute or scale, right? So for example, in this very silly example that I have taken, I decide to carpool with my neighbor. So that's the choice, which is a convergent thinking. I converged on, I did not go for all the other choices, but this choice, right? So this is the thinking outlook. That's the third piece that I want to cover. Now, what is the, is there any, if I may put it this way, just give me a second. Let's say if innovation or problem solving is something like this, it's a meandering, puzzling, baffling, uncertain world. I start with a question and end with a dollar, in a sense, value. Value can be not necessarily only financial value. It can be also emotional value. It can also be transactional value. It can have sentimental value. There's a value can be defined in multiple ways. So just take this dollar sign as a sign of value, and this question is the question or the problem we're trying to solve. And then from that problem statement, how do we reach to the value? This path is very meandering. Now, and it looks like, okay, look, up until now, till university, whatever method, barring the people who are the PhD students, they really get into nonlinear and linear problem solvings, which is in the wicked nature. But barring the PhD students, most of us, we do not solve, we are not trained to solve wicked problems, right? The entire academics is focused on solving analytical problem, right? Now, you might wonder, then, is there a method to this madness? It looks like a madness to me. There's no method, there's no certainty. How do I know whether I'm on the right path? And that's where the framework of design thinking comes in. And we split up this entire journey in 4 questions, let's say. This is one of the ways. There are multiple ways, by the way. And for the lack of time, we will not get into all that, but I encourage you to look up. For example, there is a method for design thinking for AI, right? So how, if you are building solutions with artificial intelligence, IBM has a fantastic framework which is based on design thinking, but I urge you to go there and explore it yourself. So, okay, but here we are splitting up the entire process or the journey in 4 questions. What is, what if, what was, and what works. And what is about observation, where we are. what we see and what are the problems, which is about empathy, exercising empathy, creating an empathy map, building the entire, choosing what problem we are trying to solve, etc. And that's the current state A. And then we ask what if. In what if we ask for, we look for possibilities in the future. We think of a state B, which can be reached from state A. Okay, it might be illogical, but it is okay. And there is a method to that. I'm coming to that in a minute. And then we create these choices. What if this happens, that happens, etc. And then among those choices, we figure out what wows. There may be 2 or 3 possibilities which are really a wow proposition, which has a significant delta in terms of consumer utility, right? And therefore we prioritize and then select those, explore those few possibilities or few opportunities or few ideas which has a potential to deliver a greater impact. And finally, we figure out through different kinds of iteration, prototyping, testing, etc., what works among them. And if I can say yes, I kind of sailed through these 4 questions, I reach out to the value, right? And that's in a way, in a nutshell, at a high level, is design thinking. Okay. And in order to give you a little bit more detail about the process, we will also explore what is called a double diamond method, right? A double diamond, excuse my scribbling on the board. It is coming from some other another session that I did. Okay. Now, a double diamond method is a method which or a mental framework or a mental model which helps us navigate this mess or this madness, right? So we start on the left side. You see there is a trigger, right? So we start at a trigger. For example, here in Hult Prize, their trigger is redesigning fashion. That's a trigger. Okay. It says something that, okay, you are talking about, you're limiting your playing field to only fashion. And by that, there are multiple, within fashion, there is clothing, there is footwear, there's lifestyle, makeup, cosmetics, right? Wearable tech, there can be, personal protective equipments. There are so many different things which are possible there. But all these possibilities are kind of wrapped up under 2 words, which is redesigning fashion. That's the trigger that we have. Now, on that trigger, what you are supposed to do as a participant to, let's say, this Hult Prize competition, you are supposed to come up with a problem statement first, and then a solution which is pertinent, promising, and which has a massive impact in terms of improving, please mark these words, improving the quality of human experience, right? Quality of human experience. So whatever we propose, whatever new product we develop, new services that we develop, new systems or processes that we get into the world, is something that improves at the end of the day the quality of human experience. If it does not, then it is not an innovation, so to speak, right? Now, we have a trigger. The trigger is, let's say, redesigning fashion. And then what we do in the first phase, so this is the first phase, let's say, I'm talking about, just a sec. So here, this is my phase 1, right? Phase 1, what I do is I wear a divergent thinking hat, meaning I try to create different choices in terms of, or rather, I kind of explode on my understanding on fashion, okay? And then I create, okay, fashion might mean clothes, footwear, smart wearable tech, etc., etc. There are so many different things that redesigning fashion can mean. So my question to myself or my team, when we will be, I'm sure you have your own team, when you sit and sit on a whiteboard or with your sticky notes, you'll try to come up with what this statement can mean. Okay, what are the playing fields that we have? It is like, let's say, if I say clothing, I want to only remain in textile and not go to plastics or cosmetics. Somebody might think, oh no, I want to go deeper into cosmetics and not into wearable tech. Or somebody might say, oh no, I want to get into smart watches and smart, let's say, devices which monitor health and stuff like that, which are wearable technology, right? So that's the domain I want to be in. So you can first spell out what are the possible domains which are there within the purview of redesigning fashion. Okay, you create your choices. Do not judge, just explore. And it requires a lot of research. You have to read. I'll give you an example today how you can read a report and do secondary research, talk to some experts who are there in this field, ask them what are the pressing problems in these fields, right? And they will tell you that, look, these are the things which this industry is struggling with. Or you can read a report by consulting companies like McKinsey. I will show you a McKinsey report from where you can create a canvas for yourself. I'll show it in 10 minutes. Now, once we have done that, then we get into a convergent thinking mode. And in that, what we do is, in that mode, we say, okay, look, we know that this is a very vast field. Even it is fashion, within fashion, there's so many things, right? And I will talk about 10 opportunities within fashion that I will just give you as a pointer. I'll come to that. Let's say we have created 10 playing fields here. Okay. Then we choose, okay, what kind of skill sets we have in the team? What do we understand more? Where we have limited understanding? Do we have a team member who understands this field, etc., etc., right? Do we have access to resources which we will be able to leverage in order to solve a particular problem in that domain? So therefore, we choose here. Okay, we prioritize. There are techniques. There are dot voting, these, that. There are many techniques. We cannot. It's like maybe a 40-hour course. So therefore, I would not get into all that. But there are prioritization techniques using which you can arrive at one particular problem statement. Okay, one problem statement which you will solve. So end of the first diamond, we have a statement called, let's say, HMW, and HMW is the abbreviation of how might we. Okay, it's a framing. So let's say we can say, how might we solve A for B? B is, let's say, a persona. Let's say we can say, how might we solve let's say the traceability problem for cosmetics. So let's say, I'll give you an example here. Let's say cosmetics, right? It touches our skin, and therefore we are very it's pertinent that it has to be the chemicals and all that should be regulated. There should be some kind of safety measures in that. And then there is one more thing about, if you look at, I'll give you another link to a very interesting case study on the cosmetic industry in India, where think about let's say mica. Mica is something that is used heavily in the cosmetics industry. And think about where does mica come from? They come from mines, right? Mica mines. And in the mica mines, there are child laborers who are there who are exploited left, right, center in this country. And then the ethical question comes in, that in order to create profitability and growth, these large cosmetic companies, do they not have a responsibility to make sure that they do not engage in child labor? They do not do anything fishy about it. For example, I'll give you one more example. In some of the Islamic countries in the world, they have a religious, let's say, barrier to use animal fat. But animal fat is very commonly used in cosmetics. So therefore, there's an opportunity probably to create animal fat-free cosmetics, right, for a particular sector, particular religion, people from a particular religion. So people who are sensitive to it, right? So that's how you can form your problem statement. Now, understand, in the first diamond, we are not even talking about the solution. We are talking about what problem we are trying to solve. Because the underlying assumption is this: if we ask the right questions, it leads to the right solutions. Okay, so asking the right questions is more important than actually offering a solution, because it kind of sets the cannon, and then sets the gun, and then when you fire the cannon, you have all your resources going there. So therefore, it's paramount that we aim properly. We pick up our problem statements right. So and then I call it like building the right things, right? So how do you know you are building the right things? So that's the beauty of this first diamond. Okay, and this is therefore it is called the problem diamond. And once we have this problem statement, this is from a design brief. So here in the trigger, we have just a trigger, which is redesigning fashion. It's pretty broad, but not very broad. We are not talking about, let's say, we are talking about only the fashion industry, but not, let's say, railway, transportation, or any other industries, or medical, healthcare, right? We are talking about fashion, but within fashion, there's so many, and therefore we narrowed down to one, what we are going to look deeply into. And therefore we get into a statement at the end of this diamond, which is a problem statement in the form of a how might be, possibly. And then we get into the next phase of problem solving, which is the solutioning bit. And in that, we follow the same two-step process. First, create choices. Let's say we picked up, let's say, this cosmetic thing, let's say animal fat-free cosmetics, or let's say whatever it is. Okay. Then we create choices. How many different ways we can attack that problem? How many different possible solutions can be there? What are the different facets of that particular problem? If there are multiple dimensions to that particular problem, can we pick up one of the dimensions and then build something on it? How do we choose that dimension? Because we have to choose a dimension of the problem which has, let's say, 80% of the problem would be solved if we solve that one thing, right? So we need to prioritize. And therefore, before we prioritize, we create those choices again. And these are all solutions, possible solutions and possible approaches. And then we get into this in the second phase of solutioning. We again choose, right? Choose from this, let's say, 50 or 40 or 30 ideas that we had. We did not judge back then. Now we prioritize based on what resources we have, what capacities do we have within the team, and then what is the biggest possible impact that we can create with that solution. And then we come to one or two ideas on which we build a prototype. And that's kind of the designing phase of it. The prototype is something that we can put in the hands of an end user whose life we are going to change with this solution, and see whether it actually works, because it's based on our presumptions, right? And it will not work, okay, more often than not. And you will learn in this journey. You will also do a lot of user research. There are many techniques for doing that, and we'll figure out that this prototype requires certain change, and then we go back and do the same thing. We repeat, right? So that's how the process operates. So this is like the third phase, and then the fourth phase. So this is the double diamond framework. Next, constraints. So we spoke about playing fields, right? So every playing field, let's say a football ground, it has a periphery. A tennis court has a periphery, right? A cricket ground has a periphery. Even a scientific research also has a periphery, right? So we need to have a limiting condition for us. And what are the limiting conditions? Typically, these limiting conditions are threefold, in fact, fourfold. One is, whatever I am making, is this desirable for the end user, for whom we are making, right? So do they want it? The question is, do they want it? If they want it, then I have to ask the second question, okay, can I make it? They want it. If I can make such a solution, they'll be happy to use it. But can I make it? So that's the feasibility question, okay? Do I have the technology, resources, etc., for making that solution happen? Even if I can make it, let's say, so they want it and I can make it, fantastic. Then you ask this question, is the cost of making such a product or service is commercially viable? Can I make money in this? Okay, can this business make money in this? And that is the viability question. So these are the three constraints that we have. But the fourth dimension is usability. In fact, usability is something that some of you probably would know. People who are probably study product management, product development, you will understand. Usability is about whether a user can figure out how to use a product for a particular purpose. For example, if I talk about a smartphone, you give a smartphone to a small kid, they'll also figure out how to navigate and probably make a call. So it means that it does not require super intelligence for a user to actually use that product. Now, if somebody cannot use a product, you cannot ask this question, do you want it? So therefore, usability is of paramount importance. in order to check for desirability, we need to first check for excuse me, usability, and then ask the question, do you want it, right? So I'm not getting into, again, this is again very high level, quick understanding. You can definitely research on it, and you'll see it's a rabbit hole. You have to stop somewhere and get back into action. Then we spoke about constraints. Now, what about process? So now, what about the method that we are talking about? The method to the madness, right? So we have a process. Many people call it in different ways. Some people have a 3-step process. Some people call it a 5-step process. It doesn't matter. Okay. Essentially, all are saying the same thing. For this conversation, I will give you this 3-step process: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. Okay. Understand this: these 3 are overlapping processes. They are not an end-to-end process. It's not something like I ended the inspiration and then I will start ideation, and then after the ideation I will start implementation. And it's not like that. It's an overlapping process. Just for the sake of understanding, we are thinking linearly here. Okay. Now, what is an inspiration? These are called 3 I's: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. And I love to put another 4th I here, which is impact. So inspiration is all about, exercising those 7 mindsets and all the thinking hats that we spoke about, which is about figuring out, observing people's lives and hopes and needs and feelings and desires of the end users. It's where it's called HCI, or human-centered design, or HCD, right? So that's where we observe people and try to see what is broken in the world. Okay, that's inspiration. And of course, in inspiration, it's a divergent thinking. You can see here, right? It's a divergent thinking. We do not judge. The next phase is, once we are significantly inspired by a particular problem statement or a particular area, we start to figure out, okay, what could be, what are the process of generating or developing or testing ideas. That's about ideation. Okay, so at the end of the ideation process, you will have either a better question to answer, or you'll have an answer to a very good question. Okay, let me repeat it. At the end of every ideation session, there are different kinds of techniques here. I'll discuss about 2 today. Okay, in the later phase. But let's say one is scamper and another is brainstorming. That's what we will discuss today. But there are many, plus 40 plus, ways to do ideation, both linear and non-linear thinking. Now here we are saying that we are trying to generate, develop, and test. Generate, develop, and test ideas. And those ideas lead to either a solution to an already identified problem or a better question to answer. Both ways we are successful. Okay, it's not necessary that every ideation will have a definitive solution. And then the third phase is implementation, where we talk about getting an idea from the project room to the market. Okay, so how do we take that particular idea? We do pilot, we do a prototyping, we do with a small, we hire or recruit few users who would give us a lot of feedback, and then we build on top of those feedbacks, and then we feel at certain point in time that it's ready to launch in the market. So that's the implementation. And then when you get something good on the ground, then you can create the desired or sometimes undesired impacts on the people that you are solving it for. So that's pretty much on the basics of design thinking. Any questions so far? Do we have any questions?
Okay, so now Harsham will moderate the Q&A session. Over to Harsham, please.
No, sir, are you finished? Like, I guess you
Sorry?
still have so I guess you still have a few parts to go through, right?
Oh, yes. No, I'm just asking. There are 2 more parts, but I'm asking if you have any questions on things that we have discussed so far.
Of course, if anyone has any questions, it's open to you. Or yes, first you can go ahead.
I have a question regarding. Am I audible to everyone?
George, can you open up your camera? I have a hard time talking to a wall. Please, if it is okay.
Actually, I'm out. That's when I would have switched on my camera from the starting of the
No
video.
worries.
I'm so sorry for
Let's
that.
go shoot. No problem.
Uh, okay, I'm so sorry for my turned off camera. Actually, my question was that do you know the design thinking part when we start? Am I not audible?
Yes, yes, you are. Go on.
You are audible.
So the design thinking part where we start at one design, we go to broader horizons, and then we narrow down to a problem, and then we work on the solutions. What if the point we hit is a dead end? How to recover from that? How do we tackle if the problem we narrowed down gives us a dead end?
Sorry. Can you repeat your question? I mean, I could not understand what you're saying.
Okay, so basically, design thinking's first step is to narrow down to a problem we
Yeah.
need to work on, right? But sometimes it so happens is that the problem we decide upon ends up to a dead end. Like every problem cannot have a solution to it, right? So how do we, find a different problem that comes to our terms and everything?
Okay. Are you asking if I have a problem that is impossible to solve at this stage, given technology resources? How do we identify that? Is that a question?
No, if it is impossible, it's impossible. But then it so happens now that when we have narrowed down to a problem, we want to work on it, even though it's impossible to work on for our given resources.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. First thing is impossibility is relative. Understand this. It can be. So that's why I gave you that framework of that feasibility, desirability, and the viability framework, right? Now, if you think that something, let's say if I say that I can, I have a portion which is which will make a 80-year-old look like 30. Okay, I have a solution. How many people will queue up for that solution? Tell me. Probably a very large fraction of the elderly, right? They will. So
Yeah,
there is a
largely.
strong desirability for people to uh, take that solution. But coming to the next constraint, which is feasibility, can I make this given the technology that I have today? Can I make this? The answer is today, no. I can probably do some cosmetic changes. I can we can go a notch towards it, but it is not that I have got an elixir which will reclaim youth. Okay, so therefore it fails there. Now let's say some super enthusiastic industrialist with a scientist with a lot of money and resource at disposal puts on billions of dollars into the research and development of creating such a thing, right? Even if when that solution would be successful in solving that problem, it might be prohibitively expensive and may not be viable to actually launch. So therefore, still you do not have an innovation. Innovation is in the intersection of desirability, feasibility, and viability. So if you ask me how do you identify which are the impossible things we should just park, check these three things. If it is no, it's a no in any of these three domains, we do not have an innovation. It's something that better to be parked. Is
Okay,
that
thank you. Got it.
okay? Perfect. Anybody else? Okay. So I assume that no questions. So I will go on to the next part, which is getting a little bit deeper into fashion itself. Okay. So here's how you should approach this. Okay. I'm giving you a live example how you should do research. Okay. In the first diamond, we are still in the first diamond. We are trying to figure out what problem to solve, right? Let's say what I did, I went to the internet and I found a report by McKinsey on the state of fashion 2020, right? And it's a 144-page report. You can see it here, right? 144-page report. But I scanned through it. I picked up 2 pages, okay? 2 pages where they summarize 10 pressing problems in the fashion industry today, right? And I read through it. I, of course, do some secondary research, and I come up with a landscape, a playing field. What is my intention? My intention is to create a playing field. What is my playing field? Am I a tennis player or a cricket player or a rugby player? That's what I'm trying to figure out here, right? And here I have some pointers in this report that there are these 10 very pressing problems which are there in the fashion world or in the fashion industry today, right? And from there, I create a landscape like this. You see this grid, right? Maybe I can remove this for the time being. On each column, I create a box. It's like a box in a sense, a silo, okay, where I would go deeper into each of these 10 possible opportunities. Every problem statement or every challenge is an opportunity for a design. So we identify this 10. And then I will, in the next part, I will talk about how you should go deeper into your selected one. Now, for the time being, let us just spend some time on maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes in each of these 10 opportunities. Now, first one is driven by the global economy, which is, let's say, during 2 years of COVID lockdown, people were all locked up at home. They did not have to go to office or school or college, so therefore they did not need the kind of wearables that they usually have, right? So, and then there is certain constraints on the supply chain of this entire fashion industry. Now, think about it. Fashion meaning what? There are many things: clothing, footwear, lifestyle, cosmetics, right? There is PPEs, or personal protective equipments, wearable technology, laundry, ironing, storage. There are so many different facets or sub-domains of within fashion, right? Now, pick any, okay? And then let's say, think about how that particular raw material, from the raw material, it lands up in the hands of the end consumer. Okay, if I think about cosmetics or let's say clothing, then it starts from the fabric and the yarn, from the textile mills to people who are buying those textiles, and then kind of giving it to people who are weaving it, and then it is coming to distributors, and then there are brands who are designing certain kinds of, fashion is always driven by brands and the design. And of course, probably some of you know, there are 4 fashion capitals in the world, which is New York, Paris, Milan, and what is the fourth one? New York, Paris, Milan, and I think 10 years back it used to be Tokyo, but now there's another city I'm forgetting. Okay, so these 4 fashion capitals, like financial capitals, like technology capitals, define what we wear, how we look at wearing clothes and stuff like that, right? What would be in fashion, in vogue. Now, so COVID has changed a lot of stuff in terms of the logistics. Let's imagine when COVID lockdown happened, a lot of inventory stockpiled on the road itself, right? In the shipyards and in the railway tracks, on the railway tracks, and on the road itself, things got stuck up, right? And fashion is something that is cyclical in nature. Something which is fashionable this season will not be fashionable next season, and therefore that's a loss of revenue and in this locked up inventory. So therefore, this report talks about the increasing supply chain and logistics challenges here, right? The recovery is still uneven. It's not very stable. Recovery from COVID and the way we are coming back. I think this report was a little dated, right? It was during the first half of 2022, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt, but that's what it is. Now, the opportunity. What is the opportunity here today? Then how do we rethink sourcing strategies? Can there be systems to accommodate for variable demands, right? So if the demands vary, how can we create a system which deals with variable demands? Okay, can we optimize the supply chain? These are some of the opportunities that I could think of by spending 5-10 minutes on this report, on this particular domain. Okay, so this is one field, which is logistics supply chain. The next one could be, the shifting behavior of the consumer. Now, what happened? Let's say here I've got given 2-3 indicators here. Now, consider these as pointers. These are not, something cast in stone. You should do your own research, and you should dig up and kind of come to your own conclusions. But these are all pointers. Now, one question here would be, how might we capture the shifting shopping patterns of some segment? Let's say Gen Xers or Gen Z or the millennials or the elderly people. How COVID, being locked up in a room for 2 years, we were buying or using only sportswear or loungewear, right? So pajamas, and we were all in our pajamas and shorts, right? We did not care to invest in outdoor fashion, but that is a pent-up demand. Now, after 2 years, people are coveting for newness, right? So therefore, what could be their next buying preferences? If I can create an analytics, if I can create an insight with some kind of a research product, which will be super valuable for the brands, they will be willing to pay you millions, believe me, right? So a statement could be like this: how might we help global luxury brands in rebalancing global distribution? Now, distribution is when the product is already ready. How does it reach the end user? And that could be a duty-free network for a luxury product, right? Let's say the duty-free networks that we have at airports and stuff like that. Then local e-commerce channels, right? So that could be one statement. The third reallocating their wallet share. Like they have during COVID, a lot of people have even worked 2 jobs, and they have saved on they have gone back to their home, right? So they like hometown, and therefore they don't have to pay rent. So there is that is a consumer surplus. Anybody from economics will understand that. So that consumer surplus is a pent up resource which people are willing to spend on something. Now, how can we grab in a sense from a fashion brand's perspective? What is the next thing that he's probably going to buy? So these are questions, open questions, right? Now, let's say a data-driven product discovery. Now, product discovery and development is, what is the product that I should create, right? That is the question we try to answer in product discovery. And then, can it be data-driven? Can we create something on that, right? So that could be one pointer here. The fifth playing field could be the metaverse. Okay, so what about people who are into gaming, who are into let's say augmented realities and in the digital world, like in the metaverse, so to speak? And then they need a virtual avatar, and they need their virtual goods. They need, what about then? Why not create some non-fungible tokens based on the people who understand blockchain? Right? So NFTs are very unique, non-fungible tokens, which are digital assets that you can own, and then you can also resell and stuff like that. You can flaunt. So fashion is also about self-expression, right? So if you are in a physical environment, you wear clothes and cosmetics and stuff like that to send a signal that you have an identity, and that identity has value, and that is whatever status or whatever is your value of life or lifestyle. So similarly, when you are spending way too much time in the metaverse, in the digital world, you will also need digital goods there. So there is a market. So especially in the gaming and virtual fashion. So then the one potential problem statement could be that how might we use these new routes to creativity, community building, and commerce. So gaming is a community-based thing, right? And then in the virtual world, how do you if you have to create products and products for the virtual use, then you need to have that kind of people, designers, builders and coders and graphic designers and whatnot. They have to come together and be creative in order to build something which can be sold on the virtual in the virtual marketplace, right? So that's the metaverse opportunity. Coming to social shopping, right? So about some of the companies, like let's say in India we have Meesho, right? That's a social commerce platform. Now, what is social commerce? How people are buying. Okay, how people are buying. Initially, traditionally, we would go to a retail store or to a nearby marketplace or to a shopping mall, and then we will buy. So those are formats. Okay, they are called formats. There's a large format, like let's say a shopping mall, where it's a multi-brand shopping experience. But there are also dedicated retail outlets. Let's say you go to a particular Levi's showroom, and they only sell Levi's jeans, right? They do not have Pepe or any other stuff. So that's another format. And then you have modern trade, which is about e-commerce. You can go to Myntra and buy your pair of jeans, right? But now there's one more, which is social commerce. Now, you just don't want to go and buy it on Myntra or online. You also want to know what your friends are wearing, and you discover them on Facebook, on Instagram, on other platforms where people flock. It's a community-based filtration. And then companies in the social commerce domain, they have created a curation engine which kind of pulls together all these demands, and then they hook it up to a back-end supply chain and a base of manufacturers, and boom, they have a social commerce experience. Okay, so maybe think about shopping in a group, right? So let's say you might be going for a shopping for your wedding or your sister's wedding, and then that decision of that what sari or what dress she would be wearing is not just her, but a lot of other people in the family. They want to do a group shopping, and then you can do that remotely. Let's say, I'm just throwing some idea. If you can create something like that, a platform which allows for group shopping remotely, are there takers? I feel so. Okay, so that's social commerce. Now, coming to a very grave and very super important area, which is about sustainability. Now, the thing is circular textile. They call it circular textile, which is about reusability. For example, if you actually go deeper, how a pair of jeans is manufactured, for example, right? It is just not the fabric and the color and the stitching and the design. It is also about, it has to be a stone washed. It has to be acid washed. There should be some, worn out kind of feeling in that. And then what happens once I buy this? And by the way, in order to create a pair of jeans, I'm told they spend hundreds of liters of water to create one acid washed or a stone washed jeans. Okay, it does. So the cost of a pair of jeans on the world today, like on the atmosphere, is phenomenally high. Okay, now people are thinking, how can we reduce this? And also, fashion is something that we just use and then throw it away. Throw it away. Every 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 2 years, we throw away our stuff, right? Or it piles up somewhere. So and then it ends up in a landfill, right? And then the entire decomposition cycle. It has got, let's say, my jeans has a metal in it. There's different kinds of, there's plastic, there's this and that. So the cost to the environment is humongous, and it is not sustainable. And therefore, there's a lot of opportunity for doing cyclical or recyclable fashion. So we can ask things like this: how might we embed sustainable closed loop technology? Okay, it's called closed loop tech, right? So closed loop technology in early design and production system. We can say, how can we scale a closed loop recycling system? How can we limit extraction of raw materials that are required for production of our fashion goods? How can we decrease the textile wastage, right, at manufacturing, in distribution, and after use? How can we facilitate large scale collection? So let's say, for example, if you decide today, okay, we will recycle, fine, no problem, we'll recycle our clothes. But how do you collect? How do you store? How do you get those in the hands of the designers and the manufacturers who are going to create on top of it? There are companies today who build or who create or manufacture garments only and only based on recycled clothes. Okay, so how do you tell that story? There is a branding opportunity. So that's pretty much on this side. I think you get it, right? The idea is not to give you the whole thing, but the idea is to point you to be able to think for yourself. Now, talking about sustainability, we cannot shy away from the topic of accountability. So if there is environmental damage which is happening because of this, who's responsible, who's accountable for it, who should pay the price, right? Now, sustainability does not happen without accountability, and accountability does not come without traceability. Now, when I say traceability, it means that I need to know as a user or as a distributor where this piece of cloth is coming from, whether there were child labor used in production. For example, in places like Bangladesh or any Southeast Asian countries which are big on fashion manufacturing or contract manufacturing, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Bangladesh. So all these countries, they use less than, why do you think that the Europeans and the Americans, they outsource the manufacturing to Asia? Because the compliance and legal regulatory framework here in these countries are weaker. They can do things, they can manage their workforce in a way, they can make them work overtime at a very cheap cost, and then also probably do not follow all the standards that probably if you have to have a manufacturing setup in the US or in Europe or in Germany, somewhere you'll have to have a very high cost for that. So they outsource it here, right? So how do we know that where it is coming from and whether it was compliant to proper human hygienic this thing, etc., right? So traceability is a value, and there's a concept called a product passport. So for example, our passport tells us where we have been, which are the countries where we have been when. Similarly, if you think about any product, right, and then think about the product passport, it would be a digital product. Understand this, the product passport would be a digital product. Maybe the QR code already today tells me a little bit about the where it has been manufactured, where it has been designed. If you see the labels today, it is typically written, okay, designed in California. Let's say Apple, they say designed in California, made in China, right? Similarly, on clothes also you see. I mean, it was pretty interesting to see when I visited Paris and I wanted to buy something from there, and I had very little time before my flight, so I grabbed whatever I got from a shop, and then when waiting at the airport, I opened up those things and I saw, oh, this is made in Bangladesh. You understand? Buying something, I thought that I'm buying from Paris, and it's something that I would be, the person would be very happy about. And then I found, oh, it's made in Bangladesh. Maybe it is designed by some designer in Paris. But all I'm trying to say is that there is a concept called product passport. So, and it is all about building traceability. Now, you ask me, Avijit, how do you do that? Think blockchain. Think about, here we are talking about building a trustless network. Can you utilize, can you build a product on blockchain which will create traceability of products in the fashion industry? Maybe very specific, maybe clothing, or maybe cosmetics, maybe something else. So that's the opportunity here. Okay. So the question is, how do I store and share the product information in a trustless network? That's what I have added here. So that is a humongous opportunity today. Okay. Another one is about cyber resilience. So you can understand, we are talking about a lot of users here. We're talking about a lot of data, right? So and then then where is this data stored? All this data is stored in servers which are managed and maintained by these large companies. And then how do you build, how do you make sure that this data is not misused? There is enough security of your transaction, of your biological data, of your whatever, right? So all those information security related threats are something that also plague the fashion industry, like any other industry, right? Nothing specific here, but this is another opportunity. If you can build a technology which will create cyber resilience for the fashion industry. Now think about wearable tech, right? So your smartwatch, right, taking so much of data about you, and it is stored in their cloud. Now, who would be interested to know about that aggregated data? All the pharmacy companies or people who manufacture drugs or in the healthcare industry. Now, do you know whether now imagine if it is hacked, right? As an individual, you might feel, oh, it doesn't matter, but it's a compliance issue. It's a privacy issue, right? If you are in the US, people will sue you, that sue that brand, and milk millions and billions of dollars in damages, right? So in India, we don't think too much about it, but times are changing, my friend. So cyber resilience, cyber security is another domain. And finally, I would say that this report is also mentioning or indicating this, that of course, how do you make sure that the people who work in this industry are treated well? They are not overworked, they are not exploited. Especially it is a labor intensive industry, right? As I said, all the contract manufacturing happens in Asian, Southeast Asian countries where labor is cheap, regulatory framework is very weak. So how do we take care of these outsourced workers, job workers, etc.? Now, if you can build something which takes care of the interest of, if you ask who am I solving it for the contract workers in the fashion industry, boom, you have a persona, and you can uh, empathize with that guy and see what are the challenges that they are facing, and then you can build something which will solve that problem. Is that a big enough opportunity? 100%, right? So, and today, one more thing is now coming, let's say, a little higher up in the job network. Let's say, think about designers, think about all the creatives who are working here, the sourcing guys. So today, COVID has taught us that the entire workforce is diverse. It is digitized, and they need flexibility. Now, how can you have flexible, diverse, digitized workforce come in a way that does not compromise the objective of the organization? Is that a problem statement worth exploring? 100%. So all I'm trying to say is that dig deeper into these areas. So I gave you three, like 10 different areas, right, within fashion industry. Now, if you go by, let's say, clothing, footwear, wearable tech, these, that, all these 10 things, and then multiply with that 5. So there are 50 possible domains for you to explore. Okay. Now it is up to you, your preference, where you want to go. I just wanted to share my 2 cents in terms of how you should pick up, do some secondary research, and see from 2 pages of that report, I have created this landscape. Now imagine if I read the 144 pages, what more I can do, right? And maybe some other reports, stuff like that. So that brings us to the second part of today's discussion, which is about the fashion industry. How do you find opportunities for design? Okay. Any questions on this?
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the beginning of the session, you talked about the unknown problem. And right now we just talked about customer persona. When it comes to unknown problems, narrowing down on a customer persona can be very difficult. For example, with the sustainability problem, if we go to the US, we can find, let's say, a customer persona that might, that the problem might cater to. But in India, the crowd is quite unknown right now because there are not a lot of brands working in this space and not a lot of consumers. So
Okay.
how do we navigate that?
Okay, a very good question, Devamita. It's probably one of my favorite question here. I was hoping somebody not ask me because it would take away a lot of time to answer that. But anyways, I'll answer this question. So you said, so again, understand, fashion is not a regional thing. Fashion is a very fundamental, right from the ancient Romans to Greeks to ancient Indians. Every single civilization had some sense of fashion, right? You understand what I'm saying? So it's something that cuts across civilization, across cultures and societies. So therefore, across national boundaries. It's an intersection of culture, religion, language, impact. What is the tertiary impact? The tertiary impact could be corruption. Let's say, politicians. Then the moment you say corruption in politicians and all the traditional other supply chain people come in, there can be tertiary thing of death. Let's say there can be contamination into groundwater, or there can be, unhealthy, unhygienic conditions of work, and there are deaths. For example, just to give you an example, I was reading the Qatar football stadium. It had thousands of people died just to build that. Okay, thousands, like literally thousands, like 3,000-4,000 people died. That's what I am told, and about 1,600-1,700 of them are Indians. So it is definitely not something that I am okay with. It pinches somewhere. So it's a pain point. Yes, it's a pain point, and then it can also lead to economics call it a resource curse. So you might feel that okay, the state which is having the iron mine or the mica mine is going to be a rich state. All the people in that state should be super rich. But is that the case? Look at all the Africa. Okay, they have so much of resources. In India, the belt where we have the coal belt or the coal mines and all that. Do you think that those people are the richest people there? No. What is this called? It's called the resource curse. So you have the resources, and therefore it attracts all the other predators, and then things happen. India was a gold mine back then, and we have got invaders like Britishers, and before that the Mughals, and so many other. We have got 100 years of domination by others, not Indians, right? So that's a resource curse, right? So these are the three levels of impacts. Now you create this map first. Now who's impacted? In the first circle, it is only about the miner and nobody else. I owe mine and then I take it. Okay, probably I need to also involve the government because I need to take a license of that. So two stakeholders, government and the miners. In the secondary impact, you also have pollution, meaning, there are then local people, and then loss of traditional income, then maybe the farm guys, the biodiversity guys. So there are so many, the number of persona is increasing as you are going to the impact layers, right? When you go to the tertiary, you see that, okay, politicians, maybe the administration, because we're talking about corruption, maybe the police, etc., administration, the IS officer there also is a part of this, like part of this ecosystem. Therefore, he is also a stakeholder. Now you have a list of persona, don't you think so? You have a list of persona, then you choose, I will solve it for the farmer who is displaced. And then you can have an impact venture on that. That is called an impact venture, right? So it's let's say a for-profit or a not-for-profit NGO. But still it is an innovation. You might say, no, I'll be a for-profit commercial organization. I'll I'll provide technology to the miners. I'll provide something that creates some value to all these people. I'll choose who. Am I clear to you, Devumita?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how you do that. Then there is another model I'll very quickly touch upon. It's called the salience model. A salience model talks about three things: power, urgency, and legitimacy. Who has the power, who has the urgency, and who has the legitimacy in any given situation. Okay, let's say I use the cosmetics. I've got some videos. I'll probably share some of these things. So let's say if you find a boy in a borehole, we have seen this happening. A 5-year-old or 4-year-old boy trapped in a borehole. Now you can ask who has the urgency. The super urgency is with the boy. Who has the power? The police administration has the power. Who was legitimate to do something about it? The rescue team. You understand what I'm saying? The government is also legitimate, but the government may not have the urgency. The boy's family has urgency. The boy has the super urgency. The boy's family may not have power, may not have legitimacy also. They might have been in an encroached place. You understand what I'm saying? So if you put your thoughts through lenses like this, you will know that who you should solve it for. Okay, making sense? There are many things. One positive story I'll share here. I call this fair hair. So there is this company. There's this guy. I think he's somewhere in Thailand or somewhere. Who does what? Fashion industry also have makeups, right? The hairstyles and all that. So you need, let's say, wigs. wigs require real human hair, right? And then what this guy did was he went to the remote villages in some parts of those countries where naturally the girls actually grow a very nice long hair, and he offered a significant amount of money, okay, to these people who would typically be housewives or village workers, to grow their hair and then sell it to her, so sell it to this guy. So he would go and cut it and then take it and process it and sell it in the Western world at a very high price. And then from that money, he would make sure that a fair amount of money reaches these people. Now, this can be a seasonal income for these people, right? So is that a fashion related venture? Of course. Is that an impact venture? Of course. Is that something that is an innovation? 100%. So that's what I'm saying. Fair hair, right? So something like that. Okay, so I think I am. Anybody, any other question, or I will just go to the next phase? I hope I answered your question, Devamita.
Yeah, I just think along with all of that, we should also take into account consumption capacity, because a lot of stakeholders might have a problem, but they cannot either access it or pay for it.
Yeah, of course. Now the thing is, your market and your sourcing may not be in the same place, right? So the affordability might be in a mature market, the source or the manufacturing. That's why you see that today in fashion, the designing happens in Milan, in Paris, and in Tokyo, and in New York, and then the manufacturing sourcing happens from Southeast Asia. Sorry, somebody was saying something. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll just move ahead with the next part, which is giving. Okay, I've already given you two frameworks, right? So one is the double diamond, another is not two, I think a couple of them. I've given you the impact model, like the primary, secondary, tertiary. How can you identify persona? And then I gave you the salience model, right? Now I'm talking about another technique, which is a linear thinking process. So again, in thinking process, there are linear and non-linear methods. My company's name is non-linear, so I have to give you one non-linear method also. A non-linear method for ideation could be, so for example, have you heard of lucid dreaming? Lucid dreaming. Have you ever heard of this? So it requires a fair bit of self control and a fair bit of I would say a fair amount of meditation and fair amount of control on your own lifestyle is required in order to exercise such things. A lucid dream is something like, let's say, it is a state where you are not half asleep, you are not sleeping, you are also not fully awake. Okay, and typically for most people who exercise those kind of ideation techniques, it happens in just before morning. It's like typically around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, when you are half asleep. You are conscious, but you are also not awake. And what happens is, if you put, let's say, before you go to bed, and I'll give you some tips here. Before you go to bed today, first thing is 2 hours before you go to bed, have your dinner. Do not look at screens, any digital device, 2 hours before you go to sleep, and write down on a piece of paper a particular problem which you want to go deeper into, an issue, a problem or area, whatever it is. Okay, write it down. What is it that you are looking for? And then go to sleep. Okay, and then when you are asleep, consciously asleep, the unconscious mind still works on it. The unconscious mind is never asleep. Okay, so that unconscious layer of our intelligence is still working at that. And then maybe if you keep practicing this for a longer period of time, if you have control over your senses and your feelings, you will see that in the morning, in your lucid state, you get ideas like this. Okay, so typically, and of course, keep a paper and pen in front of you. You hit that idea, you write it down. Even middle of the night, also you might get some idea. So that's a far-fetched thing. It will not happen to most people who are just starting out. It requires a fair amount of self-control and meditation. But anyways, coming to something that we can do readily, which is a linear technique. Okay, and I'll give you a framework called a scamper technique. Scamper meaning S for substitute, C for combine, A for adapt, M for modify or magnify, P for put to some other use, E for eliminate or minify, and R for rearrange or reverse. These are a little like I will describe it in abstraction. Your job tonight is to take these ideas and put it in your chosen silo. So I've given you 10 silos where you can go deeper, right? The 10 rabbit holes I've given you, right? So you need to jump into the rabbit hole, use this technique, and see whether you can come out of that rabbit hole with something really interesting. Okay, now let me explain what I mean by these terms. Okay, so substitute. So what is substitute? You take something, let's say here we have the circle substituted by the triangle. So you take something, let's say in the phone, if I want to, let's say I find out that, okay, there is something which is wasteful, I replace that particular part with something else. It can be at material level, it can be a process. You can substitute a process for another process. You can substitute a material for another material. You can substitute a technique for another technique. You can substitute even an end user for another end user. Am I making sense to you? So that's substitution. Next one is combine. What is combine? You take different elements and combine into something wholesome. Okay. Think about any package deal. Let's say I'm taking examples outside of fashion, but just to drive home this idea, right? So how do you combine? Let's say when you think about your wallet. Okay, let me talk about the phone and the digital wallets that we carry, right? So earlier we used to carry a wallet, right? I mean, we still do, and in that wallet we had cash. That's how we used to pay, right? And now there was one time when we said, oh no, you know what, there is a credit card or a debit card that you can keep in your wallet, and that can become your payment instrument. Perfect, no problem. So what did I do here? I combined a credit card with a wallet, physical wallet, right? I have digital credit in a physical wallet. I don't really need the cash. I have not said that you can't keep cash here. I said with cash, I'm combining something else. But today, even if I do not have my wallet, if I have my phone, my smartphone with me, don't you think this has become our wallet, because I can pay through UPI and all that, right? So that's combined. Now think about adapt. So A for adaptation. So it's like a fish. We have put some legs to the fish so that the fish can walk on the ground. So abstract, okay? But it is about adapting. How can I adapt one thing, take it from that context and apply in some other context? So one example here I'll give you. Let's say, okay, now let's say when we say we are Uber for food. Let's say, if I say that I'm a company and I'm Uber for food, it means what? Uber delivers human beings from point A to point B. I am delivering food from point A to point B. So can I describe, let's say, a food delivery app as Uber for food? Probably yes, right? So this is like an adaptation. So I have picked up from, so let's say of human being transportation, that framework to another usage, which is delivering food. So that's kind of adaptation. Maybe not a very good example, but I think you get it. The next one is modify. So here we see that a two-dimensional object we converted into a 3D object, right? So how can you modify something? which is already existing and create some incremental value. Magnify smaller triangle to larger triangle. So here you can see that, okay, think about, so how can you build value by magnifying, right? So you can magnify, let's say, an experience. You can magnify a part of a product. You can magnify the value of a part of a product, right? So there are multiple ways. And think of examples here, and then think about how can I, let's say, use the let's say technique of magnifying value in logistics, magnifying value in wearables, in something else, metaverse. You understand what I'm saying? So that's how you need to think. It's pretty abstract, but it will be abstract in the beginning, but the moment you get into the specific domain, you will start getting clarity. Okay, the next one is put to some other use. So this was a square, but probably it can be also a chair, right? So maybe it's a top view, and from a side view we see it's a chair. So how can you put something to some different use? For example, and in design term it is called affordance. So for example, I'll give you this example. This is a paperweight, right? The idea of a paperweight to press the paper or keep the paper on the table's surface, on some surface, right? That's the affordance. That's the objective of the design of this paperweight. But can I not use this paperweight for other things? Of course, I can throw it and then hurt somebody, right? I can use, there are other affordances. So this paperweight can afford to do many other things which it was not designed for. Am I making sense? So therefore, there is always opportunities to use certain things for certain other things. For example, again, our smartphone, it was, what happened? Hello?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Just give me a second. Something happened on my system. Okay, so what is this? Is my hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, just a sec. My laptop is probably not giving me. So I'll close in next 10 minutes or so. Okay. Yeah. So there's always, if you look at, okay, I was talking about the smartphone. So let's say the smartphone, the phone was created just to make voice calls, right? Initially. And then we have put to some other use. As we have just seen, we can also use our phone as a wallet to do financial transactions. Okay. So this is about using something for something else, putting something to other use. Then we have E for eliminate. Elimination, you can see here, there are three triangles, 3 circles, and 3 squares, and then you can just put 3 of them, like one each, 1 triangle, 1 circle, and 1 square, and then still essentially you can keep the essence of the previous arrangement. It means, let's say, if I can minimize, or if I can eliminate certain things which are duplications, I can minimize wastage, for example. So let's say in processes, you have things like Lean Six Sigma, all the process optimization techniques that are there, they help us to minimize or eliminate wastage or non-value add products and services or the components, right? So you can also think about elimination. Let's say, I'll give you one more example. Let's say in Facebook or in Instagram, there are, let's say, 50 features, right? But let's say you use only, most of the people, let's say 80%, 90% of the users use only, let's say the top 10 of those features. So if they have 50 features, this additional 40 features are something which they can eliminate without disturbing the majority of the user base that they have, right? So that's a great deal of value, because maintaining every feature on a product requires a lot of resources. So elimination as a value, right? Then we have rearranging. Rearranging is of value. How do you, if you can rearrange something in order to, let's say, okay, I'll give you something. Let's say a space saving furniture. By the way, furniture is also fashion, okay? Now, let's say a space saving table, okay, which also folds up. When you are not using it, it folds down, and when you are using it, it folds up and creates a full-fledged table. So what you are doing is you are rearranging the same material to do different things. Let's say a bed which can fold up and become something else, maybe a bookshelf, I don't know. So it's up to completely to our imagination. So it is about rearranging materials. But you can also rearrange processes. You can also rearrange intangible assets, okay? And that would become valuable there, right? So now question, okay, in the metaverse, let's say if we are in the metaverse silo, what is it that we can rearrange in order to create value? What is already there, I just rearrange it, okay? So that's about rearrange. And then we have another reverse for R. Reverse is here. You can see that the reversal is not only about the sequence. Here we have that the first column has become the second column here. The second column has become the first column. But the reversal is also in color. The white has become black and the black has become white. So it only means that there are different dimensions of value which can be there in a product, and we can reverse those things, okay? For example, think about tourism, okay? Think about tourism, and you say that what is the trend? The trend is people go and visit the most visited places on the planet, right? So the most visited parts of the world are visited again and again. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go to a particular place, okay, a lot of other people want to go there. But then what could be a reversal of that? You can come up, let's say there can be 100 and 1,000 companies who are actually selling the same destinations. But you can say, oh, you know what? We don't go to the most sought after destinations. We go the path that nobody follows, but they're beautiful. Okay, we have created, let's say we have figured out a trekking route in a village, remote village in Karshiang, or maybe in the Tibet, okay, where we will take you. This is the value that we are offering. It's a reversal. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a reverse trend. It's also called an antithesis. You have always a thesis. People go by the thesis. What is the thesis? Okay, you wake up, you eat your breakfast, go to school, study, come back, play, study some more, have your dinner, go to bed. That's the thesis. What is the antithesis? Let's say somebody believes, oh, no, I want to become a footballer, okay? So I would wake up earlier than you are, not at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning. I will wake up at 5. I'll hit the field. I'll practice for 3 hours before I go to school or whatever college. I come back and I practice again in the evening. That's an antithesis. Is that everybody doing? No. Few people are doing that. If that guy continues doing it, he would reach somewhere in time. So that's about reversal. Reversal is a great value. Okay. So that kind of brings us to the end of this technique called scamper. And I will stop here and I will open up for questions. So I'm pretty much done. So if I want to summarize what we have done today, we have done 3 things. One, we have touched upon the foundations of design thinking, where we have spoken about the two kinds of problem statements, like the wicked problems and the analytical problem. We have spoken about what kind of mindsets you need. There are 7 key mindsets. We've touched upon that. We have also said that, okay, it is about thinking. The problem identification as well as the solutioning could come from our thinking only. What kind of thinking? We have given 3 kinds of thinking. In some mode, we expand our choices, then we evaluate our choices, and then we converge and prioritize our choices. That's our thinking hats. Then we have come to understand that there is a process. It's called a double diamond method. Sometimes it's also called the triple diamond method. Doesn't matter. You'll figure it out. But the essence we have seen that in every diamond we have to wear 2 hats. One is a divergent thinking, another is a convergent thinking, right? And then our idea is to first identify a problem worth solving for. The question is, who am I solving it for? Who am I solving it for? That's the end user. And then we empathize with that person with certain techniques like an empathy map or a user journey map. We see where are the pieces broken in the world? Where are the opportunities for design? Then we frame our opportunity statement or a design challenge. How might we improve A for B, etc., etc. Am I making sense? So that's the basic piece of design thinking that we have touched upon. In part 2, we have digged a little deeper into redesigning fashion. What does it mean? We have seen that we can do secondary research. We can also do primary research, but you can just go to 2 kinds of research, I will say. Just Google up, get some reports. I'll share this link. This is a fantastic report by McKinsey, which has laid down what are the bigger challenges that the industry faces today. And then you know my rabbit holes, right? So you know that, okay, these are the 10 playing fields. The question is, what is my playing field? I will have to choose one. And then within that playing field, I have to identify what are the opportunities for design. And in order to identify that, there are techniques. Again, one is expert interview. Go to a person who works in a supply chain for a fashion company. Speak to this guy, 2-3 such guys. You'll know a lot about fashion supply chain. If you want to know more about the fashion design side, metaverse, digital products, all the 10 fields that we have spoken about, figure out. Today it's very easy. Go to LinkedIn, search somebody, say a nice polite message, sir, I'm a student, I'm doing this, I need 15 minutes of your time, would you like to speak to me? Have 5 such people. I'm giving you the recipe. 5 such people who are experts in those domains. Talk to them for 15 minutes, write down what they say, come back and do some little bit more research, and then apply this camper technique. Identify what are my opportunities, what are broken in this space, and then also see, okay, am I somebody, I'm an expert, I understand blockchain, I do coding very well. Oh, well, then where can I use this trustless network? Can I build traceability for products? Product passport, fantastic idea, $1 billion idea, believe me. Okay, so how can you build something? If you are a techie, right? If you are a designer, think on that line. If you are somebody coming from a non-technology background, think about narratives. How can you build a product narrative? How can you build a pitch, right? So how can you, what is more important, okay, to the world in terms of solving a problem? What is the major, like, we have to also identify which one problem, if I solve, it touches millions of people. If it does, then we are onto something big, right? Investors would be interested, brand partners would be interested, a lot of people would be interested to work with us. So that's pretty much what it is. That's the second part we have discussed. In the third part, we have dug deeper into 3 techniques. One is Scamper, one is the salience model for identifying stakeholders, and then we have the impact, the primary, secondary, tertiary impact, that's framework. I think that's pretty much, you have got more than enough, believe me, to get started. So after this call, do not think that you do not know, okay? I know that I do not know is a fantastic point to start. Understand what I'm trying to say? If I know that I do not know, that's a fantastic superhuman strength. There are people who do not even know that they do not know. and they are truly ignorant. They're truly ignorant. And an intelligent, ignorant person is that person who knows that I do not know. And if you start from there, you start with a blank slate. You go to people not with the idea, oh my God, I'm a super intelligent guy, I know everything, I'm going to fix it. Please, okay? That is not going to help you. You have to come out of the mindset. And I cannot emphasis enough on this fact that we have to rewire ourselves first, because innovation, problem solving happens first inside our mind, and then it gets translated outside. And I'll tell you, you are raising money. Let's say Hult is going to give that one guy, or how many guys, I don't know, $1 million. That's a decent money for starting up your business if you really are serious about it. Okay. But think about it. I'll end this with this this lesson that I've learned from Swami Vivekananda. Okay. I studied in a missionary school. I went to Ramakrishna Mission. And believe me, before I turned 38 or so, I never touched upon his books. But when I did, I could not leave it. Okay. And here's what he says about fundraising. You see that we look at Vivekananda only as a spiritual leader to get liberated, mukti and moksha. I look at him as a multidimensional personality. He is a person at that age when there was no internet, no even not proper even railroad, right? He traveled the world, raised money left, right, center from people who oppressed us as the country, right? From the same set of people he raised money who would touch his feet. There's something to be learned from this guy when it comes to creating narratives, creating ideas which gather momentum. Okay, and here's what I have learned from his words. He says, one of his disciples one day asked him that, Swamiji, how do you actually gather so many people's interest and gather so much of money and resources in order to do the good that you are doing? You are just a monk. How do you don't even have any money? How do you even build a organization like this, which is spread over the world, touching millions of people? How do you do that? He said this thing to him. I'm not translating, I'm just saying you the essence. I don't recall the exact phrase. He says, if you can translate what you think, like what is your, if you can, yes, this is what he said. If you can be one with your thought, if your thought and your what you speak, like your thoughts, words and action are one. Your thoughts, words and action are one, then the world will pour in money like water on your feet. That's what he said. Okay. So the idea is, if you decide to become an innovator, an entrepreneur, you have to work on yourself. You are your first product. You are your first product. And if you keep doing that, and if you can translate your thought into your words and your words into action, there's no disparity in it. Investors, your colleagues, people will come and join you like crazy, believe me. Okay. So with that thought, I will stop. I hope you had a few things of value from this conversation. It's already 4 minutes past my time. So I'll stop here. Anybody has any question, I can take one or two, and then we will part for the day.
So I had one. Am I audible?
Yeah. You're audible.
Yeah, so in the 10 possible fields that you mentioned, you talked about social commerce too, right? What would be its impact? Would it entail? Like, we already have this e-commerce and remote commerce, right? So how would social commerce impact something, or what would it entail exactly?
Okay. See, understand this. There are two kinds of organizations. Okay. One, and also, like a baby grows from a fetus to a adult, organizations also start as a small idea, right? And then it gathers, the founder sells it to the co-founder, and he is aligned, and then you build your team, build your product, go to the market, and then you raise money, whatever. It grows, right? But end of the day, organizations are either for profit or not for profit. Okay, so we believe that when you become, again, you're all probably mostly engineers and you have some maths background, you understand when you are optimizing an equation, you cannot optimize an equation for multiple variables, right? You do a del of x, and then it means that y, z are constant. You are only dealing with that x, right? Am I making sense to you? So therefore, optimization is always and always for one element. Now, when an organization is optimizing profit, it cannot optimize for impact. Am I making sense to you? So the things that as a management team, as a board, as a CEO of the company, what you will be doing in order to make sure that your profit is maximized, you might have to compromise on other things which might seem right, sound right, but does not make sense on the P&L, on the balance sheet, on the profitability matrix, and therefore you'll not do it. Am I making sense? But if you define yourself as a social venture, as an impact venture, then what you do is you change that X for Y. You say, no, I'm not optimizing or maximizing profit here. I'm maximizing impact. Meaning, am I making sense to you, Harshan?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, you always and always have opportunities to build organizations which are maximizing the impacts in the lives of the people, not necessarily profit. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks back, I had a street dog near my house, which was in a very bad state. It used to come and sit there in our balcony and stuff like that. But it was in a very bad state, it had a very grave infection. And I was a little concerned, and I bought some medicine to spray on him. It flew away. Of course, it did not allow me. And then I got connected to a guy. I went to a doctor, right? He got connected me to an organization which runs a dog shelter for street animals. Okay, like a shelter for street animals or street dogs. I connected them. I made sure that this dog is transported to that place. I paid for that. That's not a problem. But after about 3-4 weeks, I went to see that dog. Okay. And I was taken aback. It's a fantastic facility, very large facility where they have got a capacity of 250 plus dogs they can keep. Okay. And they can treat. So every day they're treating 250 dogs, right? And then in exchange, they don't expect anything. That organization runs on charity, on donation. So if I donate something, fine, no problem. But they'll not ask you, they'll not charge you. But I know that on that dog, they have spent almost like 10,000-15,000 rupees already. Okay, I might have paid only 2,000-3,000 rupees so far, right? Now, when I will get that dog discharged, it is up to me whether I want to pay 10,000 rupees to this guy or whatever, right? You understand what I'm saying? And there are people who are doing this. Now, you can say, is there a social impact? Yes, of course, it's a social impact. Money is a measure. Money can never be a measure of success, right? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Money is an enabler. Use money as a resource, as a tool. Like you use a wrench or something. The wrench in itself has got no value. The wrench is valuable when you use that tool to create something else, right? So solve something else. So money is also like that. So if your thoughts, words, and actions are the same, then there would always and always be people who would pour in money for your cause. So social ventures do not run on profit maximization, but maximizing the impact.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Anybody else? Okay, I think we are good then. I think number of people have also reduced.
Anyone if has any questions, you can ask it.
It would be better if you can send the PPT. Oh, there's no PPT, my friend. It's a Miro board. I have scribbled down certain things. What I'll do is I'll share the links to some of these videos and some of the case studies that we discussed, and probably you can be benefited from that. I'll also share this report and this framework. Okay. Anything else? There's some. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you got something of value today. And before you know, I'm sure you will be on your way to become a change maker. Please work hard. It does not come in a silver spoon. You have to do your own work. Do your research, talk to people, figure out what the problem to solve, and then it is just a matter of time you'll get something fantastic. Build the narrative, by the way. The narrative is everything that in this context for Hult, you need a pitch deck, you need a narrative. If you need help, you can always reach out to me. I will put my my email and contact detail here on the chat. It's Avijit, Avijit @nonlinear.in. And my phone number is 8586969878. You can also reach out on WhatsApp or on this email. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for taking the time to do this session. It was a really informative one. And yeah, I guess everyone gathered something new from here. It was a really wide topic. So we'll be looking forward to host you again in Jadavpur University Entrepreneurship Cells.
Perfect. It's homecoming for me, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.